Let's get joined up. I'm Wayne Kelly, and this episode is sponsored by Picklock Publishing, the imprint behind my debut novel Safe Hands, which tells the story of Mickey Blake, a retired safecracker pulled out of retirement for one last job, and Hazel, a desperate mother driven to kill to protect her son from being sucked into a life of crime. It's out now to buy on Kindle and in paperback, and if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can read the book for free. That's Safe Hands by W.A. Kelly. Right, that's enough advertising. Cue the theme tune.
Joined up writing.
Hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 214 with Sandie Jones, freelance journalist and now best-selling author, talking about her writing journey, interviewing famous people and the desire to prove her doubters wrong. All of that, and of course we'll find out about the book that saved her life. Before that, the usual quick update from me. I'm now pleased to report I'm currently very much back in love with the book that I'm writing. I've got to admit it was touch and go there for a while as I struggled to discover the characters and work out exactly which story I was telling. But now I'm very much back in the zone and I'm in that lovely, probably very short-lived phase of I'm chuckling when I come up with a new twist or an idea or even just a funny line of dialogue. Now, don't get me wrong, I know from bitter experience these kinds of moments are rare during the process of writing a novel, so I've got to embrace them and squeeze every last drop of enjoyment that I can, like a Bedouin refilling his water skin ready for the next stage of his journey across the desert. I'm well aware it could be a long time before I reach another oasis, if you like, so I'm reveling in it. And when you as writers experience these brief pulls of joy yourself, I'd encourage you to do the same. And one of the things that's actually spurred me on, and I appreciate this probably sounds a bit strange, but is having had an early concept design of the cover for the next book. Because in a strange way, it's showing me what this book needs to deliver. Readers of my first book, Safe Hands, have consistently noted the fast pace and the page-turning elements and all that sort of stuff. And so with the sequel, I want to, push that even further. I want this to be one of those books you just have to keep reading. A recent reviewer used the phrase, it was like a Netflix box set you just want to binge, and that is exactly what I want to lean into. Which kind of leads me to the other thing I've been working on recently, which is the preparation for a day workshop that I'm running in my hometown of Leicester on Saturday, May the 11th, called Big Screen: Write Better Books and Stories Using Screenwriting Techniques. The whole ethos behind that workshop is taking tips and tricks learned from films and TV and applying them to writing your novels and your short stories. As authors nowadays, and this has come up on the podcast many times, we're not just competing with other books for a reader's attention, but all the other distractions modern life offers. Aside from social media, gaming, work and life, a huge part of that is binge-worthy film and TV. So I think we need to give ourselves the best chance and adapt some of those same approaches to make our stories even more compelling. So using film clips, scripts and examples, I show things like how Back to the Future can demonstrate show and tell to help you write a killer opening to your novel, or how When Harry Met Sally you can improve your dialogue writing skills. It's fun and interactive with exercises to help you with your current work in progress or whatever the next project in the pipeline is. Leicester's really easy to get to if you're in the UK, that is. I appreciate it might be a little bit more tricky for some of my international listeners, but at the minute there's an early bird discount making the tickets just £22.50 for a day workshop, which is pretty good, and tickets are limited, so if that sounds like something you or some of your writer pals might be interested in, check out the link in the show notes or just head over to my website waynekellywrites.com. There's more information and testimonials and all the rest of the stuff. would be amazing to meet some of you in person. So yeah, check that out. And aside from all of that, my day job is getting busy again with shoots in Glasgow, among other places, lined up for this week. So let's just hope I can maintain my momentum. So that's me, but what about you? What have you been up to? What have you been reading? Maybe you want to mention your project, your workshop, or something else. So drop me a line and let me know. And as you know, I love to hear from you and I will always reply. And you can get in touch by emailing wayne@waynekellywrites.com or dropping me a line on the Facebook or Twitter pages or wherever else you can find us. Right. Let's crack on with today's interview, which is Sandie Jones. So Sandie is the author of The Blame Game, The Guilt Trip, The Half-Sister, The First Mistake, and The Other Woman, which is a Reese Witherspoon book club pick and New York Times bestseller. Thank you very much. Her books are featured in Entertainment Weekly, Good Morning America, Good Housekeeping, Prima, and loads of others. She lives in London with her husband and 3 children, and her latest novel, The Trade-Off, which is what we're talking about today, is out right now. So enjoy the chat and I'll pop back at the end to wrap things up.
Joined up writing.
Okay, Sandie, thanks a million for joining me on Joined Up Writing. Really appreciate it. So just to start us off, why don't you tell us, give us a sense of where you're speaking from and let us know how things are going at the minute in your world.
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm in South London at the moment, from my office, which obviously I work from home. I say obviously, I think most writers do, but
Yeah.
it's obviously it's changed somewhat, I think, since COVID anyway. So I have a relatively full house most days, 3 children, mostly working from home. So yeah, it's a different setup than it was a few years ago, but it's all good. It's all good.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I know a lot of writers like to sometimes go out and go to a coffee shop or somewhere, change the scenery, but you're like me, I like to be home whenever I can.
I can't do that, Wayne. I've tried
Yeah,
several times, but I cannot. I just can't. Unfortunately, I have to work in complete and utter
I get
silence.
distracted. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I can't, people's conversations or even music playing in the background. As much as I'd love to be able to write to music, I just can't do it. So, yeah, I just unfortunately stay within my 4 walls.
That's all right, isn't it? I mean, I can write to music, but not anything with lyrics in it. But I mean,
Yes,
if I've got a preference, it is usually silent. Sometimes when I've had to sort of write in the house and my family are around, I've done the white noise thing. I don't know whether you've ever tried that or rain or something. I've done that on
I
headphones.
haven't. No, I haven't
That's
actually.
quite
Does that
good,
work?
actually. That's really good. Yeah, it's just enough to like block out the TV and all the rest of the distractions if I can't get outside to the office or whatever.
Yeah,
So I've done that, but no, I'm the same. I just get drawn into things are too interesting. People are interesting, aren't they?
absolutely.
I think writers,
Absolutely.
you're always, we'll get onto it later. You're a journalist as well, so you probably always got your feelers out and your antenna out, looking for stories and listening to people. But yeah, I just think people are too interesting. I think we're always people watching, aren't we, as writers?
Yeah, I think that is true. But then I also do worry that I'm kind of missing a really good hook somewhere by just being indoors. And if I'm,
Yeah,
and not listening to other people's conversations, I'm quite sure that I'm missing fabulous stories,
yeah, you're right.
that will turn into great novels. So,
Yeah.
it swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
It's when you hear like that, the first half of something, and then the person gets up and gets off the bus, or
Yes.
or the end of something, or one side of a phone conversation. Well, what the hell's going
What is
on?
going on?
It can be
Exactly.
enough. It's like a writing prompt.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad that everything's going so well. And why don't you tell us about your latest book, The Trade-Off?
Yes, so the trade-off is it's a deep dive into the world of journalism. As you just mentioned, I'm a journalist, or certainly a former journalist, and it's looking at the lengths that particularly a tabloid newspaper, I'd like to make that distinction, will go to get a story. Stella is the deputy editor of the Globe, and she will stop at nothing for a headline, whilst Jess, the rookie reporter that comes in, is led very much by her moral compass and only wants to report the truth. But even in her efforts to do the right thing, her handling of a story sees a celebrity pay the ultimate price. And from then on, she is determined to change the narrative and hold the newspaper accountable. But she's up against Stella, the formidable Stella, who will not be taken down without a fight. And Jess has to decide if the truth, really is worth dying for.
Brilliant. So you've got these two strong female characters, and as you say, you've
Yes.
you've got a bit of form yourself as being should we call you a recovering journalist?
I think it's a very that's a very good term, Wayne. Actually, I've not heard that one, but I like that. That's exactly how it feels.
So I mean, I think is this like your sixth published book? Is that right, Sandy?
It is. Yes, it is.
But is this
Incredibly.
yeah? But is this the first time that you've kind of visited sort of a home ground, if you like? Is this kind of a bit closer to home than usual?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's certainly been, threads that you can't help from when you're writing of yourself that kind of come into a character perhaps, or there's, there'll always be threads of me in books, but this one really is me kind of revisiting um, what I used to do. And even though I was in that environment for a long time, I'm still and remained still very shocked by the research that I've done since, and the things that I've discovered as to how it really goes down on tabloid newspapers. Maybe even I was naive. So I think with that in mind, I think the general public reading this will be really quite shocked by what allegedly goes on a newsroom of a tabloid newspaper.
Nice
Let's
use of
leave
the
it
word
there.
allegedly there, yeah. Again, spoken like a true journalist, covering your back there. So what kind of why was it the right time for you to write this story? Why do you think you settled on this as being your next book?
I think it's been something that I've wanted to write for a long time, Wayne, to be honest. I started out interviewing celebrities for what I call friendly magazines,
Hmm.
who would gladly wrap the famous names in cotton wool and print exactly what
Yeah.
I gave them and exactly what they said. Everyone was happy, and I'd feel that it was a job well done. My reputation has always been important to me, and I think rightly or wrongly, my loyalty was actually to my interviewees. It was actually never to my editors.
Yeah.
But as I started writing for the tabloids, I felt a real shift. The innocuous quotes are being pulled out of my articles and splashed as a headline, making something out of nothing.
Mm.
Um, and I'd never had anybody leave an interview unhappy. But suddenly I'd be getting calls from irate celebrities, furious that they've been taken out of context. So that's kind of where I got to the point in my personal career that I just thought this isn't how it used to be.
Hmm.
And then it got to the point where I'd set up an interview and the editor would say, if you don't get a line about their suspected drug habit, or if you don't ask them about why they think their boyfriend cheated on them, then we won't run it and you won't get paid. And
Yeah.
and for me, that was the point of no return. That's not what I went into journalism for. It wasn't what I certainly went into celebrity journalism for. It's not the kind of journalist I wanted to be. And I do really miss the chats. They were all
Yeah.
always fascinating, and I really do miss that. But I don't think I could, with the current media landscape, I don't think that I could ever go back to it, to be honest. For
I
those for
think
those for exactly those reasons.
yeah. And I think social media has made all that stuff worse, hasn't it? And like algorithms
Completely.
and things now because it is kind of bit mind you, it's not just with news, it's with I mean there's a big debate that's been raging on Twitter today about this idea of hooky books, you've got to have a hook, it's got to have a really high concept or something to hook you get your teeth into sort of thing.
Right, I haven't
But
seen
but
that. Okay.
but even so, I think with social media and how algorithms and all the rest of it work, it's kind of they're the things that stand out, aren't they? When you've kind of got something to, as you said, you're going back to an editor and they're sort of saying, give us something juicy. To ask them about this or poke them about that or whatever.
Mm.
And it's probably fair to say that all that stuff's kind of got worse, would you say, with social media?
I would say so. It's certainly exacerbated it, hasn't it? And also I think, the newspapers, in particular tabloids, are now almost totally reliant on social media for their news.
Totally, yeah.
So they're kind of picking up anything a celebrity might post, or and again, you can, and I think certainly as a reader, and I really don't actually consume tabloid news anymore at all, because I've just taken myself completely off it, because I didn't
Yeah, me
feel that it
too.
was, I didn't feel it was of any benefit to me, and it really could change my mood quite easily, and yeah, and I just think we can see it as a consumer, news consumer now, or certainly a celebrity consumer. We can see what somebody has posted, up against the way that, or the slant that a newspaper has reported it, and you can see quite clearly that there's a real difference in context and what the
Mm.
celebrity meant to say, and what and how it's reported. And I really can't be a part of that anymore.
No, I think I think context and nuance in general have just seem to be totally non-existent now, on especially with the online, anything online and breaking news cycles and all the rest of it. But you'll
Mm,
often see a headline, or you'll see, which is, there's always been a bit of that, but I just think it's kind of been really exaggerated now. I mean, nuance is really important. It's not always it's not always what somebody says, is it? It's also how they said it and in what
absolutely.
context they said it. That's kind of everything. And yet so much of things you see now is you literally just get the quote,
Yes.
and
Well,
often not the whole quote.
yeah, absolutely. And you can kind of almost relate to that in our personal relationships as well, I guess, with the difference between a text and
Mm,
a phone call.
yeah,
I can quite often kind of get the wrong end of the stick on a text, or
yeah, me
you know,
too.
you know and then you speak to them, and it's the way that it's been written
Yeah,
is not the way that they
yeah.
would have
When I
said it
said
in
I
a
absolutely hate
conversation.
you and never want you to see you again, I didn't mean it like that.
Exactly. Well, it might be a bit extreme, Wayne. Yeah, I would take that as it's actually meant.
Well, that's what she told me anyway, Sandy. So I'm taking her word for
Oh dear, yeah.
it. No, but it's great. So it's obviously really prescient, and yeah. So you thought it was a perfect time to kind of write it.
I did. I think that the recent events, certainly with several celebrities who have felt that they've been hounded to a point where they can't see a way out. I think this kind of prompted me to write this, because it's they have to, the press have to, and I don't mean to use the general term the press. I
No, I know
mean
what you're saying. Yeah,
the
that
tabloids.
particular kind
Yeah,
of press. Yeah.
yes, the tabloids need to be held accountable for. I thought things would change. Certainly in the last few years, we've seen very high profile campaigns of Be Kind,
Mm,
and I thought things would change, but let's say on the very rare occasion that I do see a headline, my heart just goes in my stomach again, because I just think nothing has changed at all. But somebody, even with the Leveson inquiry, nothing is. They still are not being held accountable for
yeah,
what they're doing to people's
yeah.
lives.
I totally
I,
agree.
I don't know what's going to change that, because we've had catastrophic events, and it still doesn't make a difference. So I don't know what's going to change it,
I
Wayne, to
get,
be honest.
yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I guess their argument would be, well, we're implicit, sorry, complicit in it, in the fact that, we're drawn to these kind of things, and they're the things that get shared and all the rest of it. But you would think that they would have some sort of semblance of like responsibility, wouldn't you, to
There's
not enter into it?
there's no moral compass, there's no conscience, and I think that's the kind of whole sort of tagline, as it were, for the book is, would you can you tell a lie? Could you put a lie on a front page, and live with it, or would you rather tell the truth and sleep at night? And there are clearly still individuals that can quite happily sleep at night and tell the lie, which I find
Yeah.
yeah, I find quite fascinating, really. But it's a very serious issue that that means a lot to me. But what I can do about it, just one person, I have no idea. But I'm trying just to raise a little bit of not awareness as such, but just to have people see a little bit of, have
Bring
a bit
it
of an
to the
insight
fore,
into.
yeah, yeah, and with an entertaining story and everything.
Yes,
Was
yeah.
it fun to write?
I did actually love it. I did. I think this is probably my favorite book to write, despite the kind of slightly darker subject matter. I think it was my favorite book to write. I just because I probably because as I say earlier, I was just truly shocked to the core about when I was researching what people have done, what journalists have done to get stories, and and so it was one of those things where my editor would normally say to me, "Well, you can't write that because that's just nobody would believe it." But
Yeah,
actually, this I've kind of kept it quite tame compared to actually what has honestly gone on. So, yeah, the research was, well, I say it wasn't fun, but it was just so interesting and
yeah,
fascinating,
yeah.
and I really got in deep on this one more than I've probably have before. But like you say, it's probably also because of my background and the fact that I was kind of quite close to the edge myself. And yeah, I'm just fascinated that people are still able to do it really and get away with it.
Do you think people that you've worked with as a journalist, though, when they read this book, do you think they're going to see aspects of it and think, "Oh, I wonder if she's talking about me there," or
I think that yeah, there will definitely be a couple of characters. I think that have will recognise themselves, but of those, I'm very glad to say they've also removed themselves. Um,
yeah,
there's a particular high profile editor that I used to work with, um, and yeah, I mean she is no longer even in the media at all,
hmm
which I'm genuinely delighted about. Yeah, so and she's so much better off for it. So
yeah,
maybe things are turning slowly.
yeah. Well, that's good. So stepping aside from the most recent book, let's just take a bit of a step back in time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you in terms of how you came to writing? What's your earliest memory of writing? Was it something that's always been, in your makeup?
I think so. I think it was certainly the only thing I remember being any good at school for sure. I just used to love writing stories. English was the only thing that I enjoyed, the only thing I looked forward to, even through all the way through secondary school. I think it was actually also, if I'm honest, the only exam that I GCSE, or not, it wasn't GCSEs and it was O levels.
Mm.
The only one that I actually passed with flying colours as well. So it was obviously always something that I was interested in. But what I'm what I find quite fascinating is that I then obviously went off to be a journalist, um, and in particular a celebrity journalist, where everything I wrote was verbatim. It was a quote from them.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
never, I was never putting my own kind
It
of,
was based on kind of interviews. Yeah,
yes, yeah, and it had to be factual. Again, going
yeah,
back to what we were saying earlier, some
yeah,
people then take that and make it infactual, but
yeah,
it was, it
yeah,
had to be, from my point of view, it
yeah,
had to be
yeah.
factual. So to come, full circle back to, at the age of what, 48, 49, to consider fiction, well, I think that's probably why I put it off for so long, or didn't even try, because I just thought the difference between, although I think people assume a writer is a writer, I think there's a very big difference between a factual journalist and
Mhm.
a fiction writer. So I think I just saw the gap as being too wide, and I just didn't think, well, where is my imagination going to come from? I've kind of, it's been bedded down for so many years
Mhm.
because I've had to report factually, that I just
Yeah,
didn't think, once I had the freedom to write whatever I wanted to write, I didn't actually think I was going to be able to do it, or be any good. So, but to be honest, as soon as I did start writing fiction, oh my goodness, it was just so liberating
yeah.
just
I
to be
bet.
able to just keep going without any kind of concerns or worry about whether I was taking any words out of context.
Yeah.
It was really freeing. I love it. Absolutely love it.
So had it always been on your kind of radar? Was it, as you said there, you felt like the gap was too big or whatever? But do you think whether you kind of expressed it, openly or whatever, but from an early age, was it you always had that desire, do you think, deep down to write fiction, or was it something that didn't really occur to you until later?
No, it really didn't occur to me. I mean, I always kind of like everybody, I think we always like to think that we've got a book in us.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it wasn't, yeah, it just didn't really. And I think also the stats of it, the chances of it being remotely successful, or getting a deal or being published in any way, I think generally, if you just kind of are skimming the surface, generally look to be so low, that I think, for many years also I thought, well, why bother, because
Hmm.
what's the point. But
Yeah.
yet, funnily enough, at the same time I'd be looking at other authors and fiction writers thinking, oh, that's not fair, how comes it. And I think, well,
Everybody does that.
exactly, but it's like, but Sandy, you're not gonna, you can't possibly compare, or you haven't tried yet, so there's no point in sort of saying, oh, life's not fair and I wish I was her and I wish I was doing that. I hadn't actually tried. So um yeah, and as soon as I did, I wrote quite quickly. The Other Woman was my debut, and I wrote that very quickly, actually, about 4 or 5 months, just totally in secret. So I didn't tell my husband, my children, or anything at all. I just literally just did it purely just to, I think just literally just to park it up, finish it, park it up, and say I'd done it, and
You've done
kind of
it,
tick
yeah.
it, yeah, and tick it off the list. It really was purely for me, to prove to myself that I could do it. And yeah, and then it's kind of just thankfully snowballed from there. So but to have made a living from writing fiction, I really didn't believe was possible.
So as you say, you wrote that first book, The Other Woman, in secret. At what point did you sort of come out, for a better want of a better term? Or when did you think, hang on a minute, I might actually have something in here? And how did you go about then going from, because it's one thing to, write that first draft, to thinking about how you get published?
Yeah, and I didn't, again, going back to the, well, she's a writer, she would have, but I didn't have any idea how to go about doing anything like that. I had no contacts in the publishing industry on that side of things.
Hmm.
Um, so it really was just a case, once I'd finished it, I kind of let it sit for a few weeks. Um, Kind of got the Writers and Artists yearbook out that had been kind of sat on my shelf, uh, looking at
Yeah.
me longingly for many years. I think it was like the 2009 edition or something ridiculous like that. But I thought, no, let's. And I literally just went through it and picked my kind of five perfect agents, from it, and but this was just dream stuff. This was just pure fantasy. I was going to pick my five top agents that sounded like, they'd be a great fit, because they obviously say, that you need to kind of do your research on
Yeah.
agents and find people that are going to really, that are looking for the kind of thing that you've got to offer. And so again, I went into bookstores and looked in the back of the acknowledgements of who I thought was kind of writing similar-ish stuff to me. And yeah, and so I kind of selected these five, and it was a Friday morning, and I just thought, oh, okay, well, what have I got to lose? I think it was, oh, you probably know better than me. I think it was a synopsis and first three chapters,
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
it. Yeah.
Is it like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it was a Friday morning. Sent those off to all these five agents, and you obviously get these automatic kind of responses that, please give us 12 weeks, while we consider your submission, and that kind of thing. And then I got two emails just after lunch on that Friday to ask for the full
Wow.
manuscript. Yeah, and then my heart just was really beating, because I thought, okay, this is, having just had the kind of the auto email saying give us 12 weeks
Yeah, that's
to,
incredible.
yeah, and so I started getting really excited, and then started googling, what does it mean when a agent asks you to
Yeah.
submit the full manuscript, what are my
Yeah.
chances here. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it kind of just went from there. And so all five agents actually requested the full manuscript
That's
over
brilliant.
a period of 3 or 4 days, over that kind of weekend early the next week. And yeah, and it just went from there, which, I just was not, and I still really can't quite get my head around it, that's how it happened. Because I just, I think there's a lot of reasons, aren't there? But I still think that I was just in the right place at the right time with the right story. It's and that
There's
just,
always an
yeah.
element of that, but you've got to give yourself credit, Sandy. Obviously, there was the book was good. It's obviously got something that grabbed people, right from the off and quickly, because it's not like they got to it eventually after a few days or weeks or whatever. It's obviously, so even if it was your pitch must have been pretty good for them to pick up on it so quickly. So that's great.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but as I say, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was going in blind, and I don't even know if it still exists, the Writers Outage Yearbook, but I would
It does, yeah.
encourage, does it? Okay, well,
Yeah,
I would encourage anybody who's in that position and feels that they want to write fiction to pick up that book and just go for it. Just pick up just go for your 5 fantasy agents and see where it gets you.
definitely. Do you think it helped you? I mean, in the initial things you say, I've spoken to other people that have been journalists and then done fiction, and as you say, a lot of people kind of assume there's a big overlap, and I know from speaking to loads of people that there's really not. There's sort of two totally different things. But from the point of view of, I'm guessing as a freelance journalist before that, you were used to having. Did you have to pitch stories and things to editors to get jobs? Do you think that was a helpful skill to have?
Yeah, I think so. I was always freelance, so I never worked on staff of any publication actually. So yeah, there was always that element that I needed to pitch my ideas and what I had to editors, and I also think, certainly speaking to my publishing editors, my book editors since, um, they 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 quite like the fact that and I didn't even know it at the time, but I'm clearly quite used to working to deadlines,
Yeah.
which, as I say, I didn't know really kind of cotton on to before, but I guess that's kind of an inherent um, need to get things done by a certain time, which I think my book editors are really quite grateful for,
Yeah,
because
and
I
yeah,
I
and
don't
working
think
with
it
an
happens.
editor, and working with an editor, I suppose as well. I know it's a different kind of thing, but used to the idea of you give somebody your piece and they say, they come back with the red pen or whatever and
Oh,
say
the
lose.
dreaded red pen.
Yeah, whether it, with the journalism, whether it's like, well, we, lose 50 words or whatever it was that they were happy, giving the feedback that you were giving you, but presumably that played a part as well in terms of your experience.
Yeah, and I really actually don't mind at all. I'm not remotely precious about, in terms of my books, what my editor does with the red pen or what they might suggest, or which is slightly different to how I felt about being edited as a journalist, because it goes back to it's all very well them
Yeah, it was
cutting
an
50
integrity
words.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. But if they're going to change the context of what I was saying or what the person I was speaking to was saying, then it's a whole different ball game. But I'm actually very comfortable, excuse me, and I actually really enjoy the editing process of, once I've submitted my first draft, and then they kind of hit me, and it's that feeling when you get that email after waiting, I don't know, 4 or 6 weeks for feedback, and you get that email and you just sit there with your head in your hands going, no, 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 I can't do it, I can't do it, no, no, forget it. And I actually quite, although I hate that moment, I love the process thereafter, where slowly but surely things, and I still don't understand how they happen, but slowly or surely things click in my brain, and all their kind of, even a really loose comment kind of starts something whirring, and you think, actually, if I did that to that and changed them to being over there, it all makes much more sense. So I'm always grateful for my editor's feedback, and it always makes a much tighter framework of a story.
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, so the trade-off is your sixth published book. So how has your process changed since your first book, and what have you learned along the way? Maybe it's not changed. Maybe you're still doing it exactly the same. I don't know.
I think it has changed, because I think it has to, purely because it, I think with the other woman, obviously it was just for me, so I could just kind of write away to my heart's content without fulfilling any brief, any synopsis, um and looking back on it, Wayne, that was a breeze. That was so easy. My first book was so easy to write. um which is saying something, but it really truly was, because I think once you have a publishing contract, and this is where I really fall down, because once you have a publishing contract, obviously your editors and your publisher want to know, okay, so what's going to happen in book two?
Yeah.
We take us from the top. What's going to happen? Ideally, chapter by chapter, beginning, middle, end. Who's going to die in the end? Who's going to kill them? And I really have not got that brain.
Until you've
That's
written it. Yeah.
no, and I really haven't, and I don't think. I think I don't know actually. You'd probably be able to tell me. Am I in the majority or the minority in that sense? I don't. I really don't.
I don't know. I don't know. To be honest, most people, I would say it's pretty evenly split, but it's funny because it keeps coming. I mean, it's the perennial question that always comes up for writers and on writing podcasts and everything is, are you a pantser or are you a plotter?
Mm,
Um, but the thing with it is, it keeps coming up just recently, is I think regardless of how you do it, whether you sit down and you get post-it notes and you plot everything to within an inch of its life before you start writing, or you just sort of just start writing and see where it goes. I think really the process is the same. It's just that you're either front loading the planning or you plan as you write. Because one way or another, you've got to, at some point, you have to think about where your plot's going and what's going to happen, don't you? But I'm like you. I kind of have to go off. I just have to kind of find my way, and then I realize through going down lots of cul-de-sacs. Okay, it's not that. It's not that. It's not
yes.
that. Oh, it's this. It's really, really
Exactly.
inefficient. But then again, I spoke to somebody that I know really well that absolutely plots things to within an inch of the life, and she recently had to sort of ditch 30,000 words of a book that she plotted.
Oh,
So, I think I don't think there is a right or a wrong way. I think if it works for you, then it's fine. I guess the reason that you kind of have to do it up front and when you're getting your next book sorted for your publishing contracts and everything else, it's just as long as they buy the pitch,
yes, yes.
and as
But I
long
mean
as you know,
that might not resemble the end
no.
result in any shape or form. And I think they get a little bit frustrated with me on that. But I find a two-page synopsis of a novel I've not yet written so much harder
I
than a
agree.
hundred
Yeah,
thousand words
yeah,
thereafter.
yeah.
I just my brain just doesn't work like that. And so yes, I'm a complete pantser. I'd love to be a plotter, but I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. I really don't, and that makes me quite sad because it looks a little bit easier to be a
I
plotter.
think, yeah, it's really funny because most people that do write by the seat of their pants, it seems like all of us want to be plotters. Because I think we think it's going to be easier because we're going to know, oh, well, we can relax. At least I know I've got the whole story. But I don't know. I mean, I have tried it. I keep trying to force myself to plot things, and I mean, I've got this. I'm writing something at the minute, and I really tried to do that before I started writing properly,
Right.
and it's not worked because once I start writing the book and I get to know the characters, I'm like, well, that's just the thing that I thought was going to happen just does not make sense now. That this character would
Exactly.
not do it.
No,
Um,
exactly. But I mean, you said it there yourself. You forced yourself to write
yeah,
the plot out, and that's exactly how it feels
yeah.
to us, I think, doesn't it? We are really forcing something that just isn't there, and invariably doesn't end up being the final result
Yeah,
anyway.
it's
So
silly. I mean, I guess it's like I suppose it's like a singer singing, trying to sing in the wrong key, trying to sing in a key that's not, that's out of their range or whatever. It's the same sort of thing. You mean you can force it, but it's not going to be, it's going to be pretty painful for you
yes,
and for your audience.
and for
So
the reader, yeah.
so you're probably just better off, I mean, as scary as that is, I think that's the thing with it, with pantsing. I think it's actually terrifying. Um, for everybody concerned, it's terrifying for you writing it because you're like, oh well, I just hope I can do this. I hope I can write
Mm,
a book again. I
yes,
hope I can find the end. And I guess for the people that, if it's your agent or it's your publisher or whatever, they're kind of like, well, we want to know what kind of book this is going to be, where you're going with it. But you're obviously whatever you're doing, Sandy, it's obviously working because you're still trucking on book
Well, I'm
6.
still getting away with it somehow, Wayne.
Yeah,
Don't
shh,
know
don't
how,
tell
but
anybody.
yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother thing, the whole imposter syndrome is a whole nother issue. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that never goes away.
it's a terror, isn't it? It's snapping at you're biting at your heels at the ankles all the time. Yeah, it's a killer. But
I think
yeah,
that's what drives. I'm suspicious of anybody that hasn't got imposter syndrome, though. I think if you haven't got that, then yeah, I think it actually makes you a better writer. I think because it's, as you say, it's kind of chasing you all the time. That sense that you might not be able to do it again, or you're blagging it or whatever. I think as long as you don't let it overwhelm you, obviously, that's goes without
yes,
saying.
yeah, there's a balance that you need to find that sweet spot, isn't there? But you're probably right actually there in fact that we probably all need a little bit of imposter syndrome to kind of keep us where we need to be. I think that's a very
I've met probably a couple and spoken to a couple of people in my life that haven't got imposter syndrome, and I always come away from it thinking you probably should have some. But most people that are actually doing it seem to have it. To me, I think most artists, most writers, or whatever. And I think if you haven't, then you probably, it's like with the thing whether you say, if you don't know who the idiot is amongst your group of friends, then you're the idiot. It's a bit like that, I think.
love that.
um, but
But no, we're doing okay. We're doing
yeah,
okay, aren't
yeah,
we?
with skin of our teeth. So obviously, writing and everything else, books. I'm guessing you're a reader as well. And one of the segments on the show is
It's the book. It's the book that saved my life. Saved my life. Yeah, it's the book. It's the book that saved my life.
which obviously is a very overblown, dramatic title. And it doesn't have to be literal. But if I said that phrase to you, the book that saved your life, what would be the book that kind of comes to your mind? What's been a book that's been really important to you in your life?
I mean, are we talking childhood or
It can
in
be
adulthood?
anything, Sandy, anything.
Okay.
It can be fiction, non-fiction, from your childhood, something you read recently that blew you away, whatever.
Well, I think right. Well, I think from a childhood perspective, I would say it would be James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah,
Um, I think I just have real vivid memories of maybe being 8 or 9 and the teacher starting to read that to us, in story time or English lesson or whatever it was, um, and and being so enthralled by. I don't think I'd ever heard or read anything like that before, and I remember being so enthralled that she then stopped and say, okay, well, we'll pick that up again next week or in a couple of
hmm
weeks time. And and I don't know if you had them, but we had in our little school we had like an occasional book club that would kind of come in,
yeah,
maybe every 6 months, and they'd
yeah,
have put all these shiny books on their little wooden shelf set up in
yeah.
a
We
in a
had
room.
that.
So
Yeah,
did you? Right.
yeah,
And I remember going to one of those little clubs and seeing James and the Giant Peach there, um and begging my mum and dad to give me extra pocket money or whatever to buy it. And then I think you had to wait like a week or 2 weeks
yeah.
for
You
it to
had to
actually
like
be
order
delivered.
it. Yeah,
Exactly, you had to order it, and but that feeling when it was kind of delivered to me on my desk, my name was
yeah,
called out because yes, I'd ordered a book, and it was James and the Giant Peach, and I vividly remember that feeling, that real strong feeling, and even the smell of, I remember where I was sat at the time, let's say maybe 8 or 9 years old, and the smell of the book as I opened it, and so I think that had a huge impact on me because I think also I'd never read anybody that had that imagination before, that kind of imagination, that fantasy world that you could just literally dive into as a child. So I think that was definitely something that had a huge impact on me, both in terms of reading, and probably without realizing it later in life, writing. Um, and I think certainly more recently, in terms of my actual fiction writing career, it would be Claire McIntosh, I Let You Go, and B.A. Paris, Behind Closed Doors. They both came out, I think, around about the same time, if memory serves me correctly, which was probably about a year or so before I started writing. But the buzz that not only, I mean, reading I Let You Go just completely blew me away. And I just remember the buzz that those two books created, even within my own kind of close-knit friends, our group. We weren't all kind of book club readers or anything like that, but there was a real sense of just people picking up fiction again and really enjoying it and really talking about it and encouraging other people to read it and passing a book on to a friend. There was a real feeling of that, and I think maybe without realizing it, as we said earlier, I'd kind of put off the idea. I hadn't even entertained really the idea of writing a book because I didn't even think, kind of going back 2016 time, that people were probably even reading anymore or buying books. You read a lot of stuff where, as I say, the stats are not good. They're not in our favor. And those two books really kind of stirred something within me that just thought, okay, there's still a demand out there. This is the sort of thing I would really quite like to write. This is the thing I'm drawn to writing. And so, yeah, and I think without reading those two books, I don't think I would be certainly in the position that I'm in now. So, yeah, I think between those three, they are certainly books that have changed my life for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I'm the same with the Roald Dahl. That was a massive influence when I was growing up. I think
Right.
we're similar ages, and I was the same. It was yeah, that was huge, both in terms of reading, but as you say, writing as well. I think they just felt so original and fresh as well at the time compared to all
Yeah.
the stuff that was around. So
Yes.
yeah,
But they're all being changed, aren't they? So, or they have been
yeah,
changed,
yeah,
unfortunately. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's not. I don't think they'll. I would not read. I wouldn't go back to them now as much as I would like to. I wouldn't, because I would imagine that they are very different to how Roald Dahl intended them to
Yeah, it's
be.
strange that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a debate for another day, but yeah, it is. I think it's a weird precedent. So if you start, how far
Yeah.
how far back do you go, and what do you start changing? Do you start going visiting classics and
Yeah.
changing things or
Yeah.
whatever? That the whole point of media in general, but with books, is that they are a slice of the time, and how do you know what things were like if you just change it to whatever is
Exactly, to
what?
current day.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah.
It's just a
Yeah.
really well.
Exactly.
It's like 1984. It's kind of rewriting history
Completely.
sort of thing. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm totally with you there. So as we kind of move towards wrapping things up, what would you say has been the best piece of creative advice that you've been given along the way? And it doesn't have to be really specific to writing necessarily. It might just be something that's kind of stood you in good stead, or something from your beginning of your career, or whatever. Really, what comes to mind when I say that?
Um, I think. Well, I mean, I don't know that anyone specifically said this to me, but I would. It's certainly the piece of advice that I would give to anybody else. So I don't know if that counts, but
Yeah, that
it's
does
just
count. Yeah.
really just to start. I think and that sounds really simplistic, but I put it off for a very, very long time. I put it off because the time was never right. I was waiting for my children to grow up. I thought that I could only write a novel if I was kind of looking out across a stormy sea in a beach
Yeah,
hut with
yeah,
on an
yeah.
old
You're
typewriter.
French Garrett or something. Yeah.
Exactly, that's exactly it. And I think I had this kind of real image of what my life needed to be
Mm.
before I could start writing. And I really do believe you just, as I say, as soon as I started, I was off, and I finished The Other Woman on the top deck of a bus in Regent Street as it was going up Regent Street in London. I actually wrote the last
Wow.
paragraph or so on that, and I would just urge everybody to just start, because that's the hardest part. And as soon as you do, if you've got a story that is worth putting it down on a page, then you will fly. So it's just getting over that hurdle of just stop procrastinating.
Just get started.
Just get started and see where it takes you. Yeah, we're all, well, I certainly am a huge procrastinator, and everything needs to be aligned just right in my whole world for me to go to the gym. Oh, I know, next week I'll start eating healthily, and and it's when it's just get on with it. That's certainly what I've learned.
Life doesn't work like that, unfortunately, does it?
No, exactly. And that's without all the curveballs that may kind of come in your way that you were, you really weren't expecting or hadn't anticipated and allowed for. So, just get cracking, really.
Yeah. Crack on, as my grandma would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's brilliant advice. Well, as we kind of wrap things up, just tell listeners where they can find out more about you and your work online, and obviously remind them when the trade-off is actually out.
Yes, the trade-off is out on the 28th of March, and I would love to hear from anybody who picks it up. Please let me know what you think. I'm on Instagram at Sandie Jones _author. I'm also on Twitter at Real Sandie Jones, and my website is sandiejones.co.uk.
That's brilliant. Well, I'll put all of that stuff in the show notes. But for now, thanks a million, Sandie. It's been great to chat to you, and thanks for coming on Joined Up Writing.
Thanks so much, Wayne. It's been great to be here.
Joined up writing.
There you go. Thanks again to Sandie, and I'll put all of her links in the show notes over at joinedupwriting.co.uk, or you can just check them out on the device that you're listening to this on. That's it for this week, other than me reminding you to take a look at my big screen workshop over at waynekellyWrites.com, and to make sure you subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcasts from, and then you can have the show downloaded automatically every time. Also, remember to leave us a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts, because it does help other people find the show, or just keep telling your mates. That would be brilliant. So thanks for listening this week. I'm Wayne Kelly. Happy writing, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.